you doing? This is MMA Fight Night Live. I am your host, admin Nick Peralta, joined by, of course, the man who runs it all, Devlin. Joe, how are we doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Coming off 250, podcast number 5. Things are moving. Quarantine's lightening up.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm good. I may or may not be wearing pants right now, and it's a warm day out here in California, so I'm having a blast, though. This was a great card off of 250, as you said. We're on episode 5 already. Damn.
Yeah.
Stuff's going through. This summer's already hitting hard, you know. That's another thing going on, at least on my end here in the States. But we are coming off UFC 250. That's the main talking point here for this episode. We may or may not get into some politics right afterwards, but let's just dive right into UFC 250. First of all, overall thoughts on the card. Enjoyed it? Didn't enjoy it? You have fun with it?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good card. I watched pretty much the entire thing front to back, missed 1 or 2 fights here or there. But overall, it delivered. Everyone was a little bit hesitant about the card, mainly because of the headline. But, we kind of discussed last week that there were some really fun fights to look forward to. And of those, they seemed to all deliver. What did you think about it?
I thought it was great. I actually had the, because I was busy on Saturday with some things, I didn't even get to start watching the fights until the pay-per-view started itself. I watched the prelims after the fact, and then rewatched a couple of the fights just because I was actually intrigued with some of the finishes that we saw. And then I also wanted to rewatch just based on I wanted to see how some guys were able to get that finishing sequence, like Maki Pitolo we were just talking about. So let's just jump right into it. Herbert Burns was able to fight Evan Dunham, started the card off. What an impressive finish. Dunham started off hot, was landing some good shots on Burns. Burns then, just decided, okay, I got to obviously take this guy to the ground, hits a back clinch take, was able to drag him down, immediately takes the back. It was excellent technique on a guy who, the commentators, you could hear him talking about, there's an immense experience advantage over that Dunham had over Burns, and yet that didn't matter. Burns was able to still get him down, completely controlled him, sinked in the rear naked, almost textbook. It was a great finish on his part. I like that one. And then we also had Devin Clark take on Alonzo Menefield. Textbook type of performance, I thought, by Devin. We've seen him fight. He's not that well known, but I've been watching him fight before he even got into the UFC. And solid performance against another, I guess, a name probably at his level. So it was one of those like kind of passing that test type fights for him. And then we had flyweight fight, the lone flyweight fight on the card with Alex Perez versus Jussier Formiga. Now my thoughts on this one, I was actually, and again, full disclosure, as I've told you, I'm a flyweight mark. I enjoy watching the flyweights fight and perform. And Perez is looking incredibly impressive, and he's only had one setback against Joseph Benavidez. Otherwise, the man is now 4-1 or 5-1 in the division. He has one bantamweight win, but since then has fought exclusively at flyweight and has done really well. And now against Formiga, I thought this is going to be a competitive fight. I think this is going to be the kind of fight where Formiga gets tested by an up and coming talent, and he's going to have to really rely on the best of his skills, which I believe are his grappling skills. But he never even tried to take it down, and the entirety of the fight on the feet was bad news for him, as Perez just chopped him down with leg kicks to the point where the man just couldn't stand. Literally dropped him with leg kicks, and that was that at the very end of the first round there, 4 minutes and 6 seconds in. These are the early prelims, by the way, and like I said, I had to watch these back, but I was thoroughly impressed with Perez, probably the most, and then Herbert Burns, who I believe is Gilbert Burns' brother, correct? I have not even looked into that. That's just some assumption.
Yes,
right.
It is.
But yeah, I mean, that's impressive performance by those two gentlemen, especially. What did you think?
Yeah, really impressed by Herbert Burns. Gilbert was really talking up Herbert prior to the fight, saying that he's really, he believes the better, well-rounded martial artist, the one with maybe the more potential. And for Gilbert, and you could say it's his brother, maybe he's just saying it, but I mean, we've seen like the explosion of Gilbert Burns now in the last year, 2 years, and when you get to train with someone at that level for so long, it's kind of like the Shevchenko sisters minus Antonina's last fight, where you're going to kind of, minus the last fight, where in theory you should be picking up off of each other's strengths and kind of helping fill each other's weaknesses. So like you mentioned, the win over Dunham was big for the old school heads out there. They know that Evan Dunham's got a really good jiu-jitsu game. So for him to dominate Evan on the mat like that was very impressive. the Benefield Clark fight was fine. Clark was a little bit more aggressive than usual. I like to see that. Clark in his last couple of fights, he kind of been a little ho-hum, in my opinion, kind of playing it a little bit safe, not trying to go for a finish when he's in a good position. In this fight, he really seemed to try and take it to Benefield, especially after round one. And then to that Perez fight, the stoppage with the leg kicks. Phenomenal showing by Perez. The flyweight division, as everyone knows, is outside of Benavidez and Figueroa, it's kind of open. Figueredo. So, with Formiga, you have to wonder with him, he's got a 3-fight losing streak now, because now he's got Benavidez, Moreno, and Perez, 3 losses in a row. And Formiga was always that guy that was like top 3 to 4 to 5 in that division. You wonder if maybe his best days are kind of behind him at this point. But Alex Perez puts himself in a good position to potentially take on the winner of the Figueiredo Benavidez fight, which I'm sure will be booked sometime this summer. So overall, all good fights. Televised prelims, I'll let you kind of go first, and I'll take over.
Yeah, televised prelims again. I watched these after the fact, and I'm glad I did, because it gave me time to really, actually sit down, enjoy it a little bit, and take it in more on a one-on-one basis, because I was just watching these by myself, and the majority of the time I watch these, I'm watching them while talking with somebody and like trying to explain what's happening. I like giving my own commentary for the people around me. And so, but this one, I got to just really key in on specific things. And Mackie Pitolo, as I said, I watched that one twice, because like even the commentators were surprised by that finish. In the first round, Charles Byrd was actually looking really good. He seemed to be out wrestling Pitolo, who got some good takedowns here and there. I think he only got one really good one. And Charles Byrd was able to dominate the overall scrambles that ensued on the mat, and was able to find top position more and got 2 really impressive slam takedowns. Even Cormier himself was impressed. You impress that man with your wrestling, you're doing something right. So I was very impressed with Byrd in the first round. But then, it was so odd how he came out in the second. And it could have just been Pitolo really surprised him, came out more aggressive in the second round. And Byrd may or may not have been exhausted, tired, whatever it was. But Pitolo just started lighting him up, landed 2 solid elbows that you couldn't really see until you watched the replays. And then he landed a really good left that was able to pass inside the handguards of Byrd as he was standing. Got right inside there, hit him good, clean in the chin, and then from there, Pitolo landed this amazing little leg sweep, like this little leg sweep trip takedown that put Byrd down, and Pitolo just started raining down these shots. Looked really good on Pitolo's part, that he was able to keep that offensive going despite being out grappled in the first round. Not by a lot, but definitely you would say that Byrd probably took the first, especially after finishing the round strong. That was probably the most impressive performance to me, next to Ian Heinish's against Gerald Meerschaert, who did Ian just ran over Gerald. I mean, he completely put him away. I think he put him away in like the opening minute. Let me double check that. Yeah, in the first 2 minutes. Yeah, minute 14. Great finish by Ian Heinisch. And Ian Heinisch, we almost thought wasn't even going to fight. One of his cornermen tested positive for COVID-19, and so we thought he was going to get replaced, but he was retested and cleared. So the fight was able to stay intact. It was surprising. You've heard about that possible false positives out there. I'm actually dating a nurse, and I've had this explained to me, where that is a thing that happens, not very often, but it does happen. And so, good on Ian it's good and fortunate for Ian that he was able to get his corner member tested and that the fight stayed intact. Great performance from him, and that he gets to move forward. And I think he could probably take another fight. We're seeing this new trend right now of fighters who just fought, even if they lost, they're taking other fights. They're getting right back in there. I think Ian is one of those guys who could definitely do that. Hell, you could put Ian against Mackie Pitolo. That's a possible fight. But those 2 guys impressed me the most. And I'll let you take over before we talk about the heading of that one, Saracen Hooper.
Yeah, same here. When I was watching it in real time, I had a real hard time trying to figure out what happened in the Bird Patolo fight. But like you mentioned, there were a couple shots landed when they're up against the cage, and then Patolo hit that very nice trip to get it down. But it seemed like Bird, and I think it was a combination of being exhausted with being kind of hit. Patolo, if I'm not mistaken, I think went up a weight class. I think he's a welterweight, went up and fought at middleweight, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that he was fresh as a daisy. I don't think he had a weight cut as opposed to Bird, who's a pretty physical guy, pretty strong looking guy. That might have had something to do with it, but I believe that's either Bird's third or fourth loss in a row. And, that could be the end of his time in the UFC. The Heinisch Mearchart fight, not much to say about it. Heinisch came out, clipped him, put Mearchart down. It is what it is. Like you mentioned, it was nice that he was able to stay on the card after having the cornerman test positive for COVID. But the one fight that, we'll kind of lead into, and I'll go first, is the Chase Hooper, Alex Caceres headliner of the prelims. Obviously a very one-sided fight. We saw it in the Tamer fight. Hooper's real only chance to win a fight is to get it to the ground. He took a beating in the Tamer fight before getting him down and getting the stoppage. And, definitely was taking a beating from Caceres. On the feet, he just doesn't have very much head movement. He's not elusive coming in. He's very straightforward. Yeah. He's almost just, kind of like just both hands out trying to grab you. You know what I mean? So Caceres was just laying in the cut, and every time Hooper came forward, he just a little shift, a little slant, and then and then back away. And, Hooper, I'll give him credit. He's game. He never once stopped his pursuit of trying to get that takedown. He did have Caceres's back, I believe, once or twice in a standing position on the cage. But, Caceres is a vet. He's got, 30 or 40 fights. He's been in the UFC for years and years. He's, been against some of the biggest names in the division. So, a 20-year-old kid really isn't going to show him anything that he hasn't seen before. I think as much as I like Hooper and I do like watching him fight, for him to take those kind of abuse in two fights, I don't know about him in the UFC as of now. I'd kind of like it if he would go down to LFA, another smaller promotion, get a couple of wins, or at least get a couple of fights under his belt, maybe at 22 years old, kind of pop back up. I think that might be better for his long-term career, but that was kind of my thoughts on the fight. What about you?
Yeah, it was. I put it like this because I've been boxing since I was 7. So my thing was just there's got to be the fundamentals of boxing, especially when you're a counter striker. You're going on the back foot a lot of the time. It's just making sure you make the ring or the cage work to your benefit. And Caceres basically played Hooper like an orbiting Earth, like just the sun's moving and he kept circling around him, and Hooper gave him no threat to whenever he would angle out. And he continued to orbit around him as Hooper is circling on the edges of the cage. And there was no threat from Hooper to cut him off, to hurt him. Most of the shots came straight down the middle, so Alex just knew he needed to move out of the way, counter off, and was able to fire shots either down the middle. He was able to land hooks as he angled out himself, and it was just a clinic essentially from Caceres. And it was basic. There's basic fundamentals on just simple counter strike from Caceres there. And Hooper's only best chance, he knew it, was just to take this fight to the ground. And he tried several times, but Caceres is a tough guy to put away, period. Only some of the best have really tapped him out, honestly. Yeah. So, it was also said by the commentators where it's like, this is a guy that's been in there with some of the best, the featherweights. And the featherweight division has to offer. This guy's headlined a few events. He's been in there with Uriah Faber, Uriah Rodriguez. He's been in there with a lot of names. He's not the most consistent fighter, obviously, that his record would suggest. But the fact that he's been in there with these names says a lot about him still, and there's a reason he's still in the UFC despite that record and despite the inconsistency. He still puts on some of the most competitive fights against some of the best guys, win, lose, or draw. That's what's going to happen. And so when you put such an inexperienced guy who, like Hooper, who granted is 9-0, that's a solid record to have for sure. But at the young age of 20, And I thought he was 19 going in, so I'm glad he's a little older. But yeah, there's that wouldn't be the worst move to let him go down back to LFA, let him get like another 5 fights in, age it out a little bit, really, and go back to the drawing board. I was happy to see that Hooper took the loss in stride. He immediately was just like, I got to go back to the drawing board. As simple as that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not giving up yet. And so I appreciate his enthusiasm and wanting to keep it going, and hopefully we do see him, not in the UFC soon, but back to the UFC someday. That's what I would like to see eventually. And so, yeah, those were the early prelims. Again, for me, the biggest ones were Perez and Patolo, just based on the finishes and how they happened. I was very impressed by that, especially with Perez being at lightweight. Again, I think that was probably the biggest upset on the card, just based on their ranking. Because Formiga is a guy we talked about. He's been around, and now flyweight. There needs to be a lot more moving steps there to get that title picture figured out, as well as like who's next after that. And I think Perez is starting to show himself as a real possible contender after that. So I'm excited to see what happens there. We'll move on to the main card, and again, this was talked about a lot, but outside of the main event, this was a fun bantamweight showcase for that division. And holy hell, did they deliver? I mean, we had, I'll just say right now, we had Neil Magny too, who had a decent performance. I didn't know. I don't know if I agreed with the scorecards that they gave Magny on that one. I just want to skip to that so we can get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But I thought Magny won. I did not think he won all the rounds. I was very surprised that 2 judges scored a 30-27. I didn't agree with that. And the first round itself was also pretty close. But I did not think he won round 2. And then out of nowhere, he dominated the 3rd round. So I thought he did enough to win for sure. But 30-27, that was a little weird. What did you think of that?
I didn't hate the 30-27. I'll be honest with you. That fight of all the main card fights was the one I paid maybe the least amount of attention to. Yeah. I did not see any moment in that fight where Martin seemed to be threatening Magny. Now, obviously in MMA, you judge round by round based on strikes, etc. Yeah. But in watching that fight in real time, I never once saw that fight ever being a potential Martin win. And I know some people argued that Rocco should have won. And even the 29-28 scores that Magny did get, I even thought that could have been a 30-27. But again, I didn't pay particularly close attention to the fight. Magny seemed to win it from front to back. And, I'll kind of say this, and we'll kind of move on because I know the bantamweight fights are the big ones. I can never, ever peg Magny. Like, whenever he's fighting, I never know which way it's going to go, because I look at his record and I'm like, he beat Gastelum, he beat Lombard, he beat Hendricks, he beat Condit. But he lost to Dos Anjos, he lost to Lorenz Vark, and he lost to Ponzinibbio. And when he loses, it's typically in not so great fashion. So going into this fight, part of me actually wanted to take Rocco, just because Rocco's been on a nice little run yet, and he's, it seems to kind of be reinvigorated. But that being said, Magny had a really good showing. It would be really interesting if he can kind of get himself back into that top tier title picture. He'll obviously need another win or two, but happy that he's kind of turned things around in his last couple of fights.
Yeah, and I wouldn't agree that Martin won. I didn't say. I just thought he won round 2, and I thought it was clear enough that he won round 2. But yeah, Magny won that fight, and then he's gotten a little streak going himself, I believe. I could be wrong. Double check that.
Just 2.
I know he's won his last 2.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh yeah, he got knocked out by Ponzinibbio. But man, that was Ponzinibbio's last fight, right? It's kind of weird that guy just kind of went into the ether out of nowhere, right?
Well, he was injured for. Yeah, he was injured, and I know he's looking for a fight now. Maybe they can put. Yeah, I think he's trying to get something put together in the next couple of months from.
Yeah, he's not even in the rankings anymore. He's been gone so long. It's kind of crazy. Unfortunate, but we'll talk about welterweight another day. Right now, it's the bantamweights who showed up on this card, man. Like we were. There's a lot of flack on this card. Maybe not as many notable names as we would have liked, but I think the bantamweights showed up and said, "Hey, man, we're the stars of this division." A lot of guys who are really prominent now in this division. Sean O'Malley being the first, who got a walk-off knockout on Eddie Wineland. Who, Eddie's like one of those gatekeeper type guys right now. And he came in here saying he's never felt this good, and he's felt that this is the best shape of his life, and how the time away from the more modernized training of, being in a gym full of guys, and instead he had guys really keen in on him. Like Eddie came in talking about how this is definitely his fight to lose because of the fact that he trained in an atmosphere he thought worked to his benefit. And despite that, Sean O'Malley came and probably got his most impressive finish in his career, period. So that, Sugar Sean, man, I'm digging him. I really am. Like, I've been on this fence where I love his head movement. I love his movement in general. He moves really well as a guy who appreciates the fundamentals of boxing. When a guy can go in there and really display that in high level fashion, he's one of those guys who I'm really starting to become a fan of. And then the outside aspects of him, like his personality or how he is outside the UFC, and the whole battle with USADA based on testing positive for what was it? At first one was marijuana, and then another one was for stuff I think he proved was in a banned substance, right?
Yeah, I can't remember which went offhand, but yeah.
There
was
and
some
so
problems there.
he's had those problems, but despite that, he's taking it all in stride, and he's still coming out on top. And then when he goes out there and competes, he competes and performs and delivers. And so that knockout was one of the highlights of the night. Then you had Aljamain Sterling go in there against Corey Sandhagen. And I thought that this was the one to pay attention to, because, and it probably turned out to be the case, where the winner of this one probably will go on to fight for the belt. You had Corey Sandhagen, who was undefeated. You had Aljamain Sterling, who'd been a notable name. He had notable finishes and has been in there with some top guys, where his only hiccup, I believe, was against Marlon Moraes. And he bounced back from that in a big way. And now here he is against a real incredible guy in Sandhagen, and he delivered stupendously. Rear naked choke, submission finish right there in the first round. Made it look easy against a guy who, was thought to be his biggest test since Moraes. And, big, huge win for him. And like a lot of people have been saying, he's probably the next contender in line. And before we throw it all to you, man, Cody Garbrandt, I didn't think deserved this co-main event slot, but holy shit, man, he probably delivered the knockout of the year, at least the best one-punch knockout of the year. Just when we thought we'd seen one of the best with Sugar Sean, you then see Cody Garbrandt hit this almost perfectionistly timed overhand right from the bleachers, comes over the top, hits Hassan Sao as he comes in at the buzzer, and puts Hassan Sao out in one of the most brutal knockouts I've ever seen. And again, another walk-off KO where I was just stunned by the sheer timing of it. It just was him coming in, the angle of which he threw that shot, the precision, everything about that knockout. I just had goosebumps after watching it. I had to rewatch it maybe 10 times over, and I'll probably watch it 10 times more after we're done recording this. One of the best knockouts I've seen. All the bantamweights delivered. Of course, I can't imagine the Garbrandt one's not your favorite, but just due to all these performances, what did you think overall of the bantamweight performances, and give your thoughts of where these guys go next?
Yeah, I mean, the roadmap for bantamweight right now with Cejudo out of the picture, obviously it sounds like the Aldo fight.
That's another thing too, right? Is now Cejudo's gone, these guys know that the title picture's open, and it's like things are going to start getting moving here for that division. It's time to really step up and show, who are the big names that we need to pay attention to in that title picture, and all of them delivered. So that's another thing to take into account now that the bantamweight title picture is open. These guys now know there's that potential for being in a title picture just out of nowhere. Who knows if the Petrion Aldo fight even goes through? What if someone steps out? These guys are now possible names that could get in there and compete.
Yeah, I mean, the Jan Aldo fight, from what I know, is planning to go down in July, potentially August, but it sounds like July. And Sterling, I'm fairly certain at this point is definitely the number one contender. So I expect him to kind of sit on the sidelines. But with a guy like Cody, what I'm thinking might be a good move for him, the lost man in this whole division is Marlon Moraes, because Moraes beat Aldo. and now no one talks about him. And he was whooping Cejudo before, he gassed a little bit Cejudo to kind of turn the corner, but he was putting a beating on Cejudo. So I feel, Cody coming back, he was number 9 ranked, I think. He beat a Sun Tzu who's ranked 5th, if I'm not mistaken. If you really want to give
top 5, essentially, right?
Yeah. So I'm okay. I'd really like to see Garbrandt fight someone like a Moraes, someone right up near the top, and then maybe the winner of that fight gets behind Sterling. In my mind, that's kind of how I'm mapping out the division. But then, like you mentioned, you have Sean O'Malley. Well, you got to give him probably a ranked guy next. And then you look at some of the ranked guys, 10, 12, 15. There's so many good fights in there because you've got, the Stamens, the Dodsons, the Chito Veras. You got a lot of good matchups for him too. O'Malley's going to need a couple more wins, obviously, and he knows it too, to get to that next level. But I mean, when you look at his performances, I mean, he's so smooth in the ring. He's so fluid with his striking, hands down at the waist, just in constant motion, doesn't seem to get all that tired. And, he's got that really good one-punch knockout power, and he's got a good frame, good size for the division as well. So I really look forward to his next fight. If I was to pick, I'd like to see him fight maybe like a Dodson. His next fight won't be easy. Like a Dodson. He was, for a time, linked with Chito Vera. That fight never ended up happening. I wouldn't mind that, but I kind of like to see both guys rise independently if at all possible. But if they were to book Vera and O'Malley, that'd be a good fight too.
I'd be all about it. Yeah. You know what I want to see? You know what I think? Let me just throw this out there. I think if Sterling gets the next title shot, Cody needs a big win if he wants to also be in the title picture. I think you put Cody and Marlon Moraes. That'd be a fun one, man. That's the one I think that I like that. I like that a lot. I love that. Yeah, I love that fight now that I'm looking at the rankings here. Because, I mean, Moraes has no one else he should really fight. Sterling's next in line for the belt, I would imagine. And he's coming off a win. So I don't know about putting him in there with Sandhagen. He's already beaten a Sun Tzu. All those supposed to fight Jan. And then you have Pedro Munoz. And I don't even know if I agree, with him fighting Munoz right now, who's also coming off a loss. I want to see Moraes, fight somebody who's got some momentum behind him, and that makes the most sense. But him and Garbrandt and Moraes headlining any kind of fight card, that's for sure. Or like a co-main on a pay-per-view or something. I can get behind that one.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing right now. That would be Moraes by KO, by the way. Ooh. It's a good fight to make. It's a good fight to make. I like it, but Moraes has too many weapons. Right,
Cody has more weapons. Well, Cody has a big weapon.
He's got a weapon. Because he doesn't really utilize the wrestling, so he's trying to land that right hand. And I'm not crazy
it's like a
about
shotgun versus an AK. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Like more bullets are going to be flying his way, but that doesn't mean if he just doesn't get that one good shot off.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? It's always possible.
For sure. I love that fight though. That's the fight to make. Of all the fights in this band, like besides the obvious of Sterling getting the title shot, I don't care who it's against. That's the fight to make for sure. For absolutely sure. And so I think that, with that all being said, bantamweight is the division right now to keep its eye on. I can't wait to see where it goes from here. I think that, we could beat, the rest of this division looking at the top 15. I'm just so excited of where it goes, and of course I'm an Ecuadorian mark myself. So I'd love to see where Chito Vera comes. After fighting at featherweight, it was a weird type of loss to take against Song Yadong, who's also ranked up there with him. I hope we see him come back soon. Yeah, it's Cody Stamann, who moved up to featherweight as well. And I don't know if that's a permanent move on his part, but he is ranked at bantamweight. I also wonder where Dominic Cruz kind of fits into this whole mold. You know what I mean? Like that's another impressive thing. But overall, we're running out of time, so I definitely want to move to the main event of the evening. But like I said, bantamweight was going to be the discussion here for sure.
I will say one thing, and if this fight got made, I'd be super interested, although it's very early. I heard a lot of people clamoring for potentially an O'Malley Cruz fight, and that caught my attention. I'm not saying O'Malley wins. I'm not saying he wins. I'm just saying stylistically, that's a very interesting fight.
Right. And it's like, but here's the thing, dude, O'Malley's calling for the big names. He's just calling for more money with it. You know what I mean? Like he says, like, give me these big names, but make sure the money's worth it type of deal. So we'll see if that happens. There's a lot of politics with that involved. And that's probably a conversation we should save for another episode. So we'll move on to the main event here before we finish up. Amanda Nunes defending the featherweight title for the first time. So she now becomes the third woman to defend, or the third fighter, period, man or woman, to defend both titles that they're holding simultaneously. DC did it with light heavyweight and heavyweight. Henry Cejudo did it with flyweight and bantamweight. And now here we have Nunes doing it with featherweight and bantamweight. For the first time, defends her featherweight crown against Felicia Spencer, who was, you know, by all accounts, as credible an opponent as we could get. And but now, you know, has finally, you know, she just dominated that fight. It shouldn't have even gone to the fifth. That was a discussion that was being had, but, you know, almost picture perfect fight. You know, didn't ever force anything, you know, just picked her apart, even out grappled her, which we all thought, like, if Spencer has a chance, it's to take her to the ground. And even when she tried, she was taken to the ground and was dominated positionally. And, you know, Nunes would get off shots on top. There was just nothing she couldn't do in there that she didn't want to. She did everything to her liking against Spencer. It was as dominant a performance we've seen from her up until this point. And, you know, props to Spencer for being as tough as she was to hang in there for all 5 rounds. But, you know, probably one of Nunes' best performances to date.
Yeah. You know, we had the conversation last week. Listen, this 45 division has nothing for Amanda Nunes. And like, I like Felicia Spencer. She hung in there with Cyborg. She hung in there with Nunes. You could argue that they could have stopped that after the 4th round. I think they should have. She was starting to get that hematoma on her head. She was all busted up. And like you said, her only real chance of winning was to get it to the ground. And like I said last week when we had our pod, she ain't getting to the ground, man. Like, I don't know who these people are that think that, like, she's all of a sudden gonna, like, oh yeah, she's just gonna, like, be able to grapple with Nunes and, like, you know, tap her on the ground. I'm like, who are these people? So anyways, now what do we have? Now we have Megan Anderson calling for a title shot. Like, if you think the Spencer fight was bad, that Megan Anderson, you mean, what did she beat Megan Anderson the first round? She choked her out? It was early in their fight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean,
I forget about that, but yeah.
Yeah, just listen, let him go to Bellator, tell Nunes, hang up that 45 belt, go down to 35. There's not an impossible task for her there either, but potentially with a lad. Aldana just got booked against Holly Holm. If she beats Holly Holm.
Yeah. And that's the one I wanted to see next was Aldana.
Yeah.
Like that bantamweight, like that felt like it was next, but now she has to fight Holly Holm, and that's never a guaranteed win. That's certainly going to be Aldana's toughest fight. But if she wins that, for sure, she gets the title shot. Just seems like she should. Holly Holm will somehow get it. But,
it's the ongoing love affair with the UFC and Holly Holm. It's the same shit with Frankie Edgar. It's like, Frankie, can you win a fight? Good enough. Title shot. Holly Holm, she got that Ronda Rousey rub like 5-6 years ago, and she's won like 2 fights since then, but she's still in like every headlining card. She's always on pay-per-view. And I mean, it's nothing against Holly Holm. It's just like, she's not at the caliber of some of these other girls that are at the top tier. So like it's too bad Aldana has to get matched up against her, because Holm is kind of that gatekeeper to that top 3. If Aldana beats her, surely she'll get the next shot. But again, you have the Aspen lads, and there's someone else I'm missing at 35 who she hasn't fought yet. But again, none of them are likely to beat her, but there'll be more competitive fights. At 45, there's only 4 or 5 girls in the roster. Just shut it down, let them go to Bellator, wherever they want to go, and move on with it. But Amanda Nunes, again, proving she's without question the greatest female fighter of all time. Nothing but respect to her. And I think she's due to take some time off now because they're having their baby. So, my guess is we may not see her fight until next year anyway, maybe. Yeah. So, it gives some time for the 35 division to kind of get moving and, shake things up. Yeah, they can shake things up.
Yeah. Well, that was UFC 250, our analysis there. We'll definitely try to come out with another episode soon, because there's a lot politically we definitely want to try and get to at some point here, especially with I don't believe there's a fight card this weekend, is there?
Oh, there is.
No, probably not.
Yeah, there is. You know what it is.
Let's see. Wait. Oh, that's right. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Listen.
Why?
Listen. These are pandemic events. This
pandemic
is,
times. Yeah. This is what
pandemic
happens.
times. Yeah. So
you got to blame the Rona.
Yeah, you got to blame the Rona. Yeah.
Exactly. Holy shit! There's only 9 fights on this card too. Oh wait, no. There's a few other ones.
There's 11.
There's a few other ones. Yeah. They signed Anthony Ivy in case Ian Heinisch wasn't going to fight, and so now he has a fight here on this card. So good on him. We'll see how he does. I'm interested to see how he looks. We'll talk about that one next week, y'all. This was episode 5. Holy hell, we're really getting these out there, but we definitely want to try and start putting them out there. But I would definitely like to see it from you guys. If you guys hang out with us here at the very end, then throw some questions our way, and we'll definitely start incorporating these into the shows, especially in future episodes. So thank you guys so much for watching. Joe, good talking to you. Fun time as always, and we'll see you guys after the fights next week.
Take it easy, everyone.